All right, let's dive in. We're breaking down this super interesting talk between comedian Karlous Miller and, the one and only Shannon Sharpe.
Oh, yeah, that's a combo you don't see every day.
And it gets pretty wild. Like right away, Karlous starts telling this story about another comedian,
Mike Epps.
yeah, Mike Epps, who told a joke that really got under Karlous's skin.
Seems like he was ready to have it out.
Yeah.
Karlous was seriously offended, like it was more than just a joke to him.
He even said something like, there's truth behind every joke. And in this case, that truth hit a nerve.
I think that's what's really interesting here. You've got Karlous coming up in today's comedy scene where things are, maybe a little more sensitive. And then you have Sharpe, who comes from a totally different time.
Sharpie even drops this line, men didn't play like that back then.
Yeah.
Like suggesting things were way more confrontational in his day.
Definitely a different era, right? Like what might be considered just ribbing back then could be totally off limits now.
And it's not just comedy. It's like all of society is grappling with this, especially online.
Oh, 100%. Social media is a whole other beast when it comes to humor and what's acceptable.
Speaking of, Sharpe didn't hold back on Kanye West either. Straight up said he misses the old Kanye.
The one with all those soulful samples and the thought-provoking lyrics. Sharpe sees Kanye's current focus on fashion and all his other stuff as a distraction from what made him great in the first place.
And a lot of fans feel the same way. Those early albums were game changers.
Totally. They still hold up.
And we even saw Cardi B jump into the mix, defending Kanye's new direction and blaming it on, get this, his religious awakening.
Which is ironic because Sharpe himself isn't exactly known for keeping his opinions to himself.
He's out there on social media battling it out all the time.
Yeah.
But, despite all that fire, Sharpe gets surprisingly sentimental when he talks about his son.
He's a proud papa, for sure, talking about his son's achievements, like his grades, and even his musical talent.
Shows a different side of Sharpe, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like beyond all the sports and hot takes, he's just a dad.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, does he get so fired up about everything because of those same strong values he instilled in his son?
Right. Like maybe it all comes from the same place. And speaking of strong feelings, Sharpe kind of regrets not having more kids.
Definitely got that dad instinct. Even jokingly tells Karlous to have some more.
Yeah.
Which, let's be real, is pure Sharpe.
Never misses a chance for a good jab. But then the conversation takes a sharp turn, literally to guns.
Oh, yeah. This is where things get really interesting.
Farway goes on to defend John Morant's, those gun incidents, saying carrying a gun is just normal in the South.
It's a cultural thing. Sharpe even jokes about needing fire, meaning a gun, at the airport.
But it obviously stirs up a lot of controversy. Gun control, regional differences, it's a whole conversation.
Makes you think about how much where we come from shapes what we believe,
It's like, are our opinions really our own? Or are they just products of our environment? Heavy stuff.
Definitely worth thinking about. And that's something we'll unpack even more in our next segment, so stay tuned.
It's easy to hear Sharpe's take on guns and be like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to try and see things from his perspective.
Yeah, for sure. It might not be a viewpoint everyone agrees with, but it's definitely a reality for lots of folks down south.
It's not about saying it's right or wrong. It's about understanding where it comes from.
Exactly. It's like, let's acknowledge the different experiences people have and how that shapes their views, especially when it comes to something as complex as guns.
And it all goes back to what we were talking about earlier with, how where you're from influences your worldview.
Right. Sharpe's opinions, whether it's Kanye or guns, seem super tied to his Southern upbringing.
And that's a big takeaway here, right?
Yeah.
Like we all come from different places, literally and figuratively, and those experiences shape us, whether we realize it or not.
It really makes you think, how much of what we believe is actually ours versus what's been ingrained in us from our environment?
It's a deep question. No easy answers there. But I think just being aware of it helps us, be more understanding of other people's perspectives.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when those perspectives are different from our own. It's like, how can we have productive conversations if we're not even willing to acknowledge where the other person is coming from?
That's such a crucial point. And ultimately, isn't that what we're all trying to do? Bridge those divides and find common ground, even when we disagree.
Definitely. And this whole deep dive, it's been about exactly that. Challenging our own assumptions, exploring new perspectives, and hopefully having some fun along the way.
So as we wrap things up, I want to throw this back to our listeners. How much do you think your own background and experiences play a role in your opinions?
Do you find yourself drawn to the familiar, like Sharpe with the old Kanye? Or are you all about pushing boundaries and challenging the status quo?
And how do you handle conversations with people who see things totally differently than you do?
Those are some big questions to ponder, but they're the kinds of questions that can really help us grow and better understand this crazy, diverse world we live in.
So keep those conversations going, keep those minds open, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.
It's kind of amazing how much they packed into one conversation.
Right, like comedy, music, fatherhood, even guns. It's like a whole snapshot of what people are talking about today.
And what really struck me is that even with all their differences, Sharp and Karlous could still, connect on a human level.
Yeah, you could tell they genuinely respected each other, even when they disagreed.
That's what I love about these kinds of conversations. Even if you don't see eye to eye, you can still learn something, broaden your perspective.
Totally. And it's something we can all do, right? Like make that effort to understand where someone else is coming from.
Makes you realize, we're all just trying to figure things out together.
And this deep talk has been all about that, right?
Yeah.
Exploring different viewpoints, challenging ourselves, and hopefully sparking some interesting thoughts along the way.
So to wrap things up, I want to leave you with this. How do you approach conversations with people who have totally different opinions than you? Do you shut down, get defensive, or do you try to understand even if you don't agree?
Because at the end of the day, it's those conversations that help us grow as individuals and as a society.
So keep an open mind, keep those conversations flowing, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us.